Today's tech news moves fast, but understanding it shouldn't be hard. That's why Snarful Solutions Group brings you Connecting the Dots, where we break down what's happening in tech and why it matters to you. Now, let's dive in with your hosts.
Connecting the Dots, April 10th, 2025. You're tuning in as we start our day here at Snarful Solutions Group. Weather-wise, we're watching a storm system strengthening over the eastern U.S.
Yeah, it looks like potential for some severe thunderstorms. Lower Ohio Valley, deep south, maybe.
Exactly, and maybe some mixed rain and snow further north. And taking a quick peek at the markets this morning, well, not looking great. The Dow Jones is down 1.67%.
And the S&P 500?
Also down 2.09%. So yeah.
Okay. Turbulent start, both weather and markets.
Seems so. But anyway, welcome everyone to Connecting the Dots. We're here to take these headlines like the ones you sent over and really explore what they mean for you.
Right. Try and connect those dots, see the bigger picture beyond just the news alert.
Precisely. So today we've got three big tech-related stories we want to dive into, see how they link up to your everyday life.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Let's kick things off with President Trump's proposed Liberation Day tariffs. Now, the reports say these actually kicked in around April 2nd.
Yeah, that's the timeline mentioned. And initially the talk was really broad, wasn't it? Like tariffs on goods from, well, everywhere.
Pretty much, yeah. So just quickly, for anyone needing a refresher, a tariff is basically a tax on stuff coming into the country, imported goods.
Right. The idea usually is to make imported things more expensive so people buy more American-made products instead. Boost domestic production.
That's the theory. But often what happens in reality is those extra costs, they tend to get passed down.
To us, the consumers, we end up paying more.
Exactly. And based on the articles we're looking at, the list of things that could get more expensive it's long.
It really covers a lot of ground.
Think about groceries, for instance, fruits, vegetables, especially stuff we get from Canada and Mexico. Prices could go up.
And it's worth remembering, like you said, grocery prices have already climbed quite a bit since 2020.
Yeah, they really have. So any extra increase there, you definitely feel it in your wallet.
Absolutely. It just shows how, connected our food supply is, especially with our neighbors. Yeah. A tariff isn't just politics. It's potentially the price of your apples or avocados.
Okay, then there are vehicles, cars, auto parts. Mexico's a huge exporter to the U.S. here.
But not just Mexico, right? Also Japan, Canada, South Korea, Germany, the UK.
Right, a lot of countries. And we saw that the American International Automobile Dealers Association, they're already voicing concerns about affordability. Like, could this make buying a car tougher for people?
Which is a big deal. I mean, for most folks, a car is essential, isn't it? Getting to work, daily life stuff. Higher prices there have a real impact.
For sure. Then shifting to tech, the gadgets we use every day, TVs, smartphones, monitors.
Yeah, a lot of that comes from China, Japan, South Korea.
But Mexico actually makes a fair bit too, which is interesting.
And didn't those Asian countries already start talking about, like, strengthening their own supply chains, anticipating this?
Yeah, exactly. Looks like they were trying to get ahead of it, build up some resilience.
Smart move. Shows how these kinds of policies ripple outwards internationally.
And it's not just finished goods, even crude oil. Canada's our biggest supplier.
Right. And experts like Patrick DeHaan are warning this could mean higher gas prices.
Particularly, in the Great Lakes, Midwest, Rockies. Apparently, the refineries there are kind of set up specifically for Canadian crude.
And U.S. refinery capacity. Hasn't that shrunk a bit lately?
It has, so it's not like we can just easily make up the difference ourselves. Plus, tariffs on oil from the Middle East, that could also add pressure at the pump.
So energy prices are definitely something to watch. It's a complex system.
You might also see price changes on things like, well, sugar, a lot from Mexico, even meat, like beef from Canada next to that.
Staples, really. Small increases on lots of items like that, they really add up on the grocery bill.
Totally. And even like toys. Mostly made in China, right?
Yeah, the U.S. doesn't really have a big toy manufacturing base anymore.
So a tariff there might not bring jobs back. It might just mean, paying more for that birthday present.
Right. Same logic probably applies to clothes, too. Vietnam, Bangladesh, Indonesia, India, Cambodia. Big suppliers.
Exactly. And the apparel industry associations are worried about price hikes there, too.
It kind of highlights that challenge with tariffs, doesn't it? If the domestic industry isn't there or the supply chain is super global, the main effect is often just higher cost.
And it could even stretch to materials like wood, plastics from China, Mexico, Canada, the UK. That could affect say, construction costs.
And pharmaceuticals, that was mentioned too.
Yeah, we import a lot from China, Mexico, Canada, UK, India. The details there seem a bit less clear right now, but it's on the list.
Wow. Okay, so the potential reach is really, really broad.
It is. And, economists are definitely raising flags, warnings about potential price spikes, more inflation.
And maybe even slowing down the economy if businesses get nervous about all this uncertainty.
Right. Uncertainty isn't great for investment. So, yeah, concerns about downward pressure on U.S. growth.
Businesses like predictability, don't they?
Whoa.
Big policy shifts like this make planning difficult.
Now, it's interesting. While the initial talk was super broad, the tariffs that actually seem to have been implemented on April 2nd might be a bit more targeted.
Oh, how so?
Well, the Treasury Secretary mentioned a dirty 15. Sounds like maybe they're focusing on countries where the U.S. has the biggest trade imbalances.
Okay, so less everyone and more specific countries, like China, the EU, Mexico, Vietnam, Taiwan, based on last year's deficit numbers.
Seems like that might be the approach, yeah. China, EU, Mexico, Vietnam, Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Canada, India, we're all up there.
Got it. Still significant, but maybe not quite the across-the-board hit initially feared.
But we also need to remember, trade is usually reciprocal, right?
Meaning if the U.S. puts tariffs on imports, other countries often hit back with tariffs on U.S. exports.
Exactly. So you could see price increases over there for American stuff, furniture going to Vietnam, fruit to Mexico, cars to South Korea, things like that.
So it cuts both ways. And at the end of the day, economists seem to agree it's consumers, it's you who are likely to notice these changes at the checkout. yeah, it hits the wallet. It's not just abstract economics.
Definitely. And just a quick note on the stock market, we saw a dip today, but earlier in March, it actually rallied a bit when there were hints of maybe a softer approach to tariffs.
Interesting. Shows how sensitive markets are to this trade policy stuff. That earlier rally suggests investors were maybe hoping things wouldn't escalate too much. The current dip, well, maybe those worries are back.
Yeah, seems likely. Okay, let's shift gears. Story number 2 takes us across the Atlantic. How might the European Union respond to all this?
Right, and the angle here is interesting. They might see this not just as a threat, but maybe an opportunity, especially for their own tech sector.
That's the idea. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, she said the EU is prepared to respond.
And she mentioned they have a lot of cards, trade, technology, market size.
Yeah, sounds like they feel they have leverage and aren't just going to, take it lying down.
It suggests a multi-pronged strategy, perhaps. Not just tit-for-tat tariffs, but maybe something more strategic.
We also saw a report that the UK might be trying something different, offering U.S. tech firms cuts on their digital services tax.
In exchange for tariff relief. A more negotiated approach, maybe?
Trying to carve out their own path. And of course, this isn't the first tariff rodeo, is it?
No. Remember the steel and aluminum tariffs a while back? 25% from the U.S. on EU metal?
Uh-huh. And the EU hit back with 50% on U.S. whiskey.
Yeah, that whiskey tariff was quite specific. And there were even threats about tariffs on European wine after that. So, yeah, history shows these things can escalate.
But the really interesting thought here is, could these U.S. tariffs actually push the EU to invest more in its own tech scene?
Like, use this as a catalyst to maybe streamline their own regulations, boost European tech companies, deepen their single market,
Right.
become a stronger global tech player themselves.
Exactly. Could it actually spur them on to compete more effectively?
That's a fascinating potential long-term consequence. Less reliance on U.S. tech, maybe. More homegrown innovation in Europe.
It's kind of an unintended consequence, potentially. Protectionism in one place, sparking more competition elsewhere.
It happens. Trade actions have ripples, and sometimes they go in unexpected directions, reshaping industries over time.
Okay, fascinating stuff. Let's move to our third story. This one involves Meta, formerly Facebook, and a whistleblower, Sarah Wynne Williams.
Right. Her memoir, Careless People, apparently has some pretty explosive claims, but the book itself has been blocked from promotion.
Yeah, temporarily blocked, but,
Right.
and this is the twist, her allegations are now going to be examined by the U.S. Senate.
Wow. So the book is sidelined, but the core issues are heading straight for a Senate hearing.
Seems that way. So, based on reports from CNN and the New York Post, the book alleges a growth-at-all-costs culture at Meta.
And connects that culture to real-world harm. The example of the Myanmar genocide against the Rohingya was mentioned.
Yes, that's cited as a key example. She also reportedly raises concerns about Meta's role in politics, specifically mentioning Trump's 2016 campaign.
Those are serious claims. Myanmar is a tragic example of platform misuse, and questions about election influence are always significant.
The book also apparently focuses on Joel Kaplan, Meta's chief global affairs officer. Wynne Williams claims he built a political ad sales team with the idea that if politicians needed Facebook to win.
They'd be less likely to regulate the company. Is that the gist?
That's the reported allegation.
Yeah.
She also makes personal allegations of sexual harassment against Kaplan.
Okay, those are very serious accusations. And Meta's response?
They deny them strongly. They say their own investigation found no merit to the harassment claims.
Right, so conflicting accounts there. What else does the book cover?
It reportedly details Facebook's push into Myanmar and alleges failures in preventing platform misuse during the genocide. Also, a big focus seems to be on efforts to enter the Chinese market.
China. Always a sensitive topic for U.S. tech firms. What's alleged there?
Reports mention a 3-year plan under Zuckerberg, discussions about partnering with a Chinese company for censorship and data sharing, even internal talk about potential bad press.
But Meta ultimately didn't launch in China, did they?
No, they didn't. And Meta points that out in their response. They push back hard against Wynne Williams overall, calling her claims out of date and false.
And they mentioned her firing.
Yeah, they cited poor performance and toxic behavior and suggested she's paid by anti-Facebook activists. They also took legal action,
Which led to the temporary block on promoting the book, based on a non-disparagement agreement.
correct. An emergency arbitrator granted that block.
So Meta is fighting this very vigorously.
They are. But here's the thing. Despite the book being blocked, Wynne Williams is going to testify. Senator Josh Hawley invited her to a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee hearing.
So the allegations get a formal airing anyway. What's the focus of the Senate investigation?
Meta's internal culture, its work overseas, and especially, it seems, the alleged cooperation with China and development of censorship tools.
Okay. And Republicans on the committee are really zeroing in on that China connection.
Reports suggest yes, demanding records, looking into potential use of AI developed with the CCP, concerns about censorship, maybe extending even outside China.
That raises all sorts of flags: national security, human rights. And wasn't there also something about an SEC complaint?
Yeah, reportedly, Wynne Williams filed one, alleging Meta misled investors about its China entry efforts.
So multiple fronts opening up here: Senate, SEC.
It seems so. You know, it's kind of ironic, isn't it? Meta trying to suppress the book.
Might actually be drawing more attention to the allegations through the Senate hearing.
Could be the Streisand effect, perhaps.
Yeah, trying to bury something sometimes just makes people dig harder.
Okay, so let's recap our deep dive today. We've connected the dots on President Trump's new tariffs and how they could hit your wallet across a lot of different goods.
Right, and then how the EU might actually use this situation to bolster its own tech sector, kind of a strategic response.
And finally, this unfolding situation with the Meta whistleblower, the block book, but the allegations moving forward in the Senate investigation, especially concerning China.
Yeah, 3 big stories showing how trade, tech, global politics, and corporate accountability are all really intertwined right now.
And for you listening, these developments matter. From, potential price changes on everyday things, to shifts in who leads in technology globally, to how these huge social media platforms we all use are being scrutinized. It all ripples down.
Definitely has an impact on daily life and the tech environment we operate in.
So, maybe a final thought to leave you with. Considering how linked global trade and tech are, how do you think these tariffs and the responses they're triggering might ultimately shape the future of innovation, the cost of the devices and services we rely on?
That's a big question. Lots to think about there regarding competition, costs, maybe even where innovation happens next.
Definitely something to mull over. Remember, we are here to help here at Snarful, so do reach out on our website if you have any more questions.
That's a wrap on today's top stories. Remember, tech doesn't have to be complicated, and we're here to help connect the dots. If you've got questions or want to learn more, visit us at snarful.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.